Hi, this is Dr. John Grazel. Behind it all, what's driving this course is a desire to make a difference, and eventually that means turning words into actions, turning theories into actions, turning understandings into actions. Well, how do you do that? Uh, Today is the first time in our course we begin to introduce some tools, and they are just that. They are tools to help operationalize understandings, aspirations, theories. And these tools are actually very simple tools that I have developed that I use and I share them with the students. And today, the first one I share with them is what I call the 4Ps. And this is a very simple tool. It basically is a matrix of 4 boxes that look at 4 phenomena, what I call programs, projects, plans, and participation. What these are 4 approaches to begin to get action going. Uh, when you plan something, you sit down, you say, what shall we do? You put down all your ideas, you decide how you're going to be going to go about it, and you're pretty precise about what you intend. When you do a project, you have something you want to produce. I want to build a school. I want to build a road. It's a very specific outcome that you want to achieve. When you do a program, you have a broad objective. You say, okay, we want to have a program to reduce child mortality. And when you do a participation, what you basically want to do is you want to encourage people to begin to establish a dynamic together of deciding what has to be done and how we're going to do it. All 4 of these are important, but they operate very differently, particularly in terms of actions and goals and their flexibility. If you do a plan, it tends to be both inflexible in terms of the actions because you decide what you're going to do, you plan it out, and it's pretty inflexible in terms of its goals because its goals are also expressed in the plan. When you do a participation, just the opposite. You tend to be very open. You're listening to everybody. What do people want to do? Why do they want to do it? You try to reconcile differences. Very open process. A program is halfway between that. When you do a program, your goal tends to be pretty fixed. We want to uh, reduce child mortality. But you're open to any sort of actions that will do that. Do we do it through medication? Do we do it through education of mothers? Do we do it through school programs? What's important is you have a fixed goal, but you're very flexible in your actions. A project is exactly the opposite. You're pretty inflexible in your action, but open in your goals. A project, we decide we raise money to build a school. We raise money to build a road. What's the purpose of the road? Well, it could be just to help people to get to work. It could be to connect villages. It could be to move troops for security. Lots of different goals. But you're not worried about the goals. You've raised money for the project. What I try to explain to my classes, this is a tool, and you can start in any one of these 4 boxes. It's not fixed, and as we go through the rest of the course, we will show how different successful activities start and circulate. But what really is important is things have to circulate. You actually have to move between them. Now, let me give you one example because we discussed the Marshall Plan. People call it the Marshall Plan. It did not start as a plan. It didn't start as an inflexible series of goals and action. It started as a program in the State Department where the challenge was, what do we want? You had to build up the economic reconstruction of Europe to hold back communism and promote democracy. That was the program. How we do it? People weren't sure how to do it. So what was the second one? They moved to participation. They told the Europeans, you have to get together and you have to submit to us an agreed upon plan of what you're going to do backed by a permanent organization. So it moved from program to participation. The Europeans participated and actually came up with the plan, how they were going to get together, how they were going to create committees, how they were going to have countries submit their ideas, how they were going to approve particular activities. Out of that plan came a whole series of projects, that were approved according to the processes that the plan recommended. Using these 4 boxes, thinking about them, are good ways of starting a conversation. Should we do a project? Should we get together? Should we have a plan? But also realizing that each of them has different degrees of flexibility and inflexibility that can determine where you start, and also why you have to circulate from one to the other, regardless of where you start. Now, this is very important because what causes a great deal of problems is people get stuck in one of the boxes. They draw up a gigantic plan. This is the history of the Soviet Union. We have an agricultural plan. We're going to plant 100,000 tons of potato on May 1st. Well, if it rains and the ground is soggy, potato rots. But under the Soviet Union's way of doing things, if the plan was to plant potatoes, you planted potatoes. And it was decided by central planners. But they can get stuck in any of these boxes. How many of us have been in international conferences and they get stuck in participation? Everybody's participating, everybody's talking, and nobody really reaches any agreement on anything. You can get stuck in projects. How many times have people say, this is what we're going to build. We've raised money. We're going to build this, even if it turns out it's not necessary. The example I give in class is people say, well, they forget the goal. And they say, we're going to build a school. But very often, the reason children aren't going to school is not because they don't have a school, because, you can have a school under a tree. It's because they don't have a teacher. Or maybe they can't get there because they live on the other side of the river and they need a bridge. But people who raise money, they love for things and projects, can get stuck in their projects. And you can also get stuck in programs. And I think an example, which is going probably somewhat controversial, is the Millennium Development Goals that we have now, which are program goals. They give broad goals, and they're pretty flexible on how to arrange it, but they almost have a life of their own. And the fact that some of them, in fact, are impossible to accomplish, as stated, doesn't seem to stop that program from going forward. And people aren't saying, yeah, but we don't have projects to go along with that goal, or we haven't really had participation for that goal. So you can get stuck in a program as well. I want to propose to you that there are 2 reasons they get stuck that very often aren't clearly recognized. The first one is emotional. This little matrix actually looks a bit like a Myers-Briggs psychological test, which says whether you're introverted or extroverted. And in fact, people tend to like to do one or other of these because of their personalities. Compulsive people like to plan, very innovative people like to participate, and they don't like the other. And very often their emotions determine where they want to be involved, which is fine if they're collaborating with others who are comfortable in the other boxes and are willing to work with them. But if not, they get stuck. The second one is very important. In this course, foundational principles have an important role, and we stress principles. But sometimes everything isn't a principle. Sometimes some things are just pragmatic tools. And these 4 P's are just pragmatic tools. But sometimes people try to turn them into principles. We can't do anything without participation. Well, sometimes you don't have time for participation. You don't have the right people for participation. We can't do anything without a plan. Well, sometimes you don't have time to plan. You have to move forward. They gave us money to build a school. Well, sometimes it's foolish using the money for it, and you have to figure out how you can change the rules. This is the program. It doesn't fit under this program. Well, sometimes the program isn't the right program. So you have a health program, and everybody's working on medications when the problem is really that they don't have nutritious food and they've got to have an agricultural program. So, but people say, get stuck in principle. On principle, we have to do this. It would be wrong to do anything else. So these are the 2 devils that one has to be careful of when one's really just talking about simple tools and how you apply them pragmatically to get from words, theory, and knowledge into action.